Hi guys, it's Nick from Let's Chat, and in this video today I'm going to review my round 17 footy tips, and I'm also going to do my round 18 footy tips. So let's get into it, everyone. So first of all, we're going to review my round 17 footy tips, and last week I've got another 8 out of 9, which is pretty good. I'll take that every day of the week. The only match I got wrong was Richmond versus Sydney. I tipped Sydney. That was, a 50-50 game, so I wasn't going to be surprised if I was going to get that tip wrong because, it was a 50-50 game. But I'll take 8 out of 9 again, which is pretty good. So now, the first game of the week is between Sydney and the Western Bulldogs. Both teams were losers last week. Sydney had a 13-point loss against Richmond, and the Western Bulldogs had a 12-point loss against Collingwood. Sydney, well, I reckon there'll be a better chance to win at the SCG than the Bulldogs are, because the Bulldogs, well, they did have a fairly decent record against them in the past, but Sydney, well, they've been okay against them at their home ground, so I'm going to tip the Swans to win by 14 points. So now the next game is between Melbourne and Brisbane, the semi-final rematch. Melbourne got back to winning ways last week against St Kilda, with Petrarca kicking 4 straight. He was playing in the forward line for some reason. Brisbane, well, they had an easy 80-point something win. They won by over 80 points, with Gunston returning back into form, playing his best game for the Lions since moving there from the Hawks. So he kicked 6 goals, which is pretty good for them. They didn't have to rely on Danaher or Cameron to kick the goals. But since it's at the G, Brisbane aren't great at the G at all. I'm going to tip Melbourne in a thriller here by 3 points. So the next game is between Collingwood and Fremantle. Collingwood had a 2-goal win over the Western Bulldogs last week, and Fremantle had a really disappointing loss against Carlton. Collingwood, this should be an easy tip, so I'm going to tip Collingwood here to win by 68 points. So the next game is between Gold Coast and St Kilda. Gold Coast had a 33-point loss to Port Adelaide last week, and St Kilda, well, they had their chances to beat Melbourne, but they couldn't quite get there. They lost by around 20-something points, because St Kilda really should be taking their chances against Melbourne, because Melbourne have a few injuries at late, and St Kilda use all those excuses for it. So, but with Gold Coast not being as good as team on paper, I reckon St Kilda will win by 25 points in this one. So the next game is between Carlton and Port Adelaide at Marvel Stadium. Both teams were winners last week. Carlton had a huge upset win over Fremantle. Yes! And Port Adelaide had a gutsy 33-point win over the Gold Coast Suns. Since Carlton are in better form, well, Port Adelaide are actually, but I know Port Adelaide have won 13 in a row, but I'm going to tip Carlton here to win by 4 points in a really close upset game. Next match is between Geelong and Essendon at GMHBA Stadium. Both teams, again, are winners from last week. Geelong had an easy win against North Melbourne, and Essendon had a gutsy win over the Crows in a high-scoring encounter. But since it's at Geelong's home ground, I'm going to tip Geelong to win by 16 points. So the next game is between the Adelaide Crows and GWS at the Adelaide Oval. Adelaide had a loss against Essendon in a high-scoring encounter, and GWS, they had a close win against Hawthorn. So I'm going to tip the Crows, since it's at their home ground. I'm going to tip them to win by 19 points. So the next game is between North Melbourne and Hawthorn on the Sunday afternoon at Marvel Stadium. North Melbourne, well, again, they had another loss. Their season's gone through hell after they started 2 wins in the first 2 rounds, but they had another horrible loss, this time against Geelong. With Hawthorn, they only just lost to GWS by like a couple goals or something. Their futures are a lot more brighter at this stage, so I'm going to tip the Hawks to win by 11 points. And the last game of the round is between West Coast and Richmond at Optus Stadium. West Coast had another horrible loss, this time against Brisbane, and Richmond, they had a big win over the Swans by 13 points. This is an easy tip. Richmond, they should win this easy. I'm going to tip them to win by 67 points. So there you go, guys. They are my tips for this week. And thank you all for watching this video. Please like, comment and subscribe. And I'll see you all in the next video. Catch you guys.